Thanks for coming by. Brian for Liberty. I really appreciate it. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Today is a big day. I even broke out the Ron Swanson shirt today because today is the ultimate libertarian purity test, and that is, do you believe that taxation is theft? If you don't, please hit me in the comments and I will explain to you why you're wrong. Taxation is absolutely theft. If you said true, you've passed the test. But here's the bad news for you. If you are running a libertarian campaign, you have to go out and you have to sell that idea to voters. And they're going to look at you like you just stepped off of a UFO wearing one of those silver jumpsuits with the V in the front and the big boots.
I came here to give you these facts.
One thing I missed during my campaigns, and I think most libertarians tend to miss this in the conversation they're having with voters, is that people immediately ask how we're going to pay for things if there's no taxes. And I think that's fascinating, and I think it's a huge opportunity because what they're saying is their concern is that we need to have these institutions paid for. They're not arguing with the fact that taxation is, in fact, theft. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us to dive in and start having a conversation about taxation first. Don't try and answer the question. I think it's a big mistake to try and answer the question of how we're going to pay for things until we get some form of agreement on the premise that taxation is in fact theft. Now, they may not get there 100%. Most people aren't going to get there 100%. I think there are a lot of libertarians who aren't there 100%. But if you can get some form of common ground, and I think the one defense for taxation not being theft is that there is a representation. You have to prove to the general public that their ability to vote does not equate to representation, and that's going to pay off as a third-party candidate for you later. But you have to convince them that they're not being represented. I think a lot of people are dissatisfied with Congress. And if you bring up this Princeton study, which is actually very interesting, take a look.
This horizontal line, that shows public support for a law amongst average Americans. This vertical line, that shows the likelihood of the public support leading to the passage of a law. When you plot it for the average American, you get a line that looks like this. There's your issue sitting on that line. If there is zero support for a law, there's about a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass it. And if there is 100% support for something, the most popular thing ever, there's still a 30% chance that Congress is going to pass it.
So this is absolutely beautiful. The study goes on to say that the preference of the American voter has a statistically insignificant impact on what does and does not become law. You don't matter. Congress no longer represents you. The study also says that, and this is going to come as a huge surprise to everybody, but the probability of something becoming a law is based almost solely on the wishes of wealthy donors. That's right. So if you take the fact that you have no choice but to pay and you're clearly not being represented, how would you define the fact that you pay taxes?
You don't even pay taxes. They pay tax. You get your check, money gone. That ain't a payment, that's a jack.
Okay, so now we have clearly defined the fact that nobody's listening to the voter. They are working for wealthy donors. They do not care what you think. You are not represented. They're taking the money by force. So at this point, the person is holding on to their belief that taxation is necessary. They're trying to defend their government, and what they're typically going to go to is how important it is to fund certain programs of the government. And even though taxation is theft, and even though we are not being properly represented by Congress, that it's still super important to pay for these. And this is one of my favorite little nuggets to shoot down because it puts the final nail in the coffin of representation and gives you a huge in regarding how much better we'd actually be as a society that was free from forced taxation. First, you hit them with the fact that the majority of their income taxes is going right into the military. The income that they're paying into for their retirement has been stolen time and time again. Income taxes don't pay for roads. Income taxes don't pay for schools. And only a tiny sliver of the money that they're sending to the federal government goes to health and human services. And for every dollar they send there, only about 30 cents of that actually makes it to somebody who needs the help, as opposed to in the private sector through charities, about 70 cents on the dollar makes it to the person that they actually want to help. Then you can start talking about all this excess income, all this excess money that would exist if they eliminated taxation, and how they could send this money directly to schools, directly to the homeless, directly to people who need help, and how much better our society would be. Not only that, but we'd only be funding a military as large as we'd want it to be. How many lives would be saved if we weren't being taxed? So that's the argument. That's how you get into this whole discussion. Now, of course, they're going to talk about roads and schools because those are the commons, and we do need those things. And I think at this point, you can actually have a discussion about how we would be able to fund those privately and through with the absence of force. And I also think that coronavirus, the COVID-19 thing that we're going through right now, kind of tells us a little bit about how things are going to change and how our government should actually be getting smaller. Are we going to need super highways that connect major cities for people to commute to and from work 5 years from now? Did we just get accelerated into the work from home era that's going to become permanent? Do we need to be building $150 million school buildings to educate kids in when every single thing they need to learn can be delivered right into their homes? So there's going to be a lot of conversation about the right size for government when this thing all clears the air. But this should give you plenty of ammunition to talk about taxation is theft, that it is stealing from you. And more important, and I think this is the point that I always want to hammer home, is that you have a disregard for the needs of your fellow man based on the fact that you pay taxes. And therefore, the expectation is that they're already being taken care of by government, okay? So when we talk about taxation being theft, we're not just talking about the money. We're really talking about a basic little piece of our own humanity, the part of us that cares for our fellow man. Instead of saying, well, that's why I pay taxes, the idea that you would have to engage in and be responsible for the environment and the community around you, for the society around you, that makes us all better people, and that's why living in a tax-free world would be such a better thing than living in this forced environment where government is taking our money by force and misusing it and abusing it in terrible ways. So I wanted to get this one out. This is it. The core of libertarianism, to me, taxation is theft, and explaining this and having this conversation with voters is going to be very challenging for you, but it is it's absolutely a conversation that you should have. It's worth having, and it's time as libertarians that we stand up and we be libertarian. So thank you again for stopping by. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to get into some specific conversations next week regarding exactly how we pay for these things, and how that would actually work as another discussion to have with voters. But I certainly appreciate you stopping by today. Hit subscribe, turn on the notifications, because I'm going to go topic by topic here over the next few weeks, hitting things that voters are going to be asking you guys out on the campaign trails. And again, if you're not running but you're interested in libertarianism, I hope you find this informative and entertaining. And as always, we will see you next time.